Space, the final frontier. These words were immortalised in 1966 by William Shatner, playing the heroic captain of the USS Enterprise, James T. Kirk, in the hit TV show Star Trek. Now, 60 years on, that TV show has spawned countless spin-off TV shows that are still being produced today. Loads of big screen movies, video games, online games, comics and books. This franchise is probably one of the biggest in the whole world. That being said, it does have a dud, and that dud is Star Trek Voyager. So today we are going to talk about 10 things that could have improved Star Trek Voyager. Number 10, better relationships between the cast. One thing that makes any TV show is the relationship with the cast and in between the cast. This is something that TNG had an abundance of. The cast all got on with each other. Even 20 years after the show ended, the cast still keep in touch with each other. Other shows have great chemistry. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, they still meet up and have dinner for no reason whatsoever. Voyager, on the other hand, had an unhappy cast. And unfortunately, unhappy cast affects actors' performers. Now, I won't say I'm a professional, I'm an amateur at best, and that's pushing it. And I know that if I'm not in the best frame of mind and not happy, these videos are going to suck. Some people say they do already, but that's a different story. But when you're an actor on a TV show, doing something week in, week out, you are playing the same character week in, week out, you need these actors to be happy, otherwise it affects their performance. And this is one of the things that happened with Voyager. Garrett Wang, who actually played Harry Kim, was actually reportedly very unhappy. Robert Picardo at the beginning wasn't actually happy about being cast as the Doctor, something he actually ended up being very happy with and very pleased with the role. Robert Beltran, who played Chakotay, he actually was so unhappy he threatened to walk out, and the people who made the show was going to let him. He decided to stay, but it did affect his performances. That's probably why his performances are a bit flat. And obviously, everyone knows that Kate Mulgrew and Jeri Ryan hated each other, which was even more bizarre because these two characters, Janeway and 7 of 9, were supposed to be very close in the TV show. This is half the reason why a lot of the performances in Voyager were a bit flat, because the cast weren't happy. They couldn't get behind their characters. They couldn't do what they wanted to do with their characters. And above all, they couldn't have fun sometimes with these characters. You need to do that. Now, obviously Voyager ended quite a few years ago. I don't know if the cast have made up and are now friends, but I wouldn't hold your breath. Number 9, not feeling like this was a rehashing TNG. At a guess, I would say about 80–90% of the stories used in Voyager could have actually just been used in TNG, and it would have made a bit of difference. Probably been a bit better, but never mind. You get the feeling that the writers of Voyager were still writing for TNG. They were making this show, for example, like TNG's Next Generation, rather than a brand new show with its own concept. And it did have a concept, and it had a good concept. But the writers, they didn't seem to get it. They were just quite happy just writing more of TNG, just with different characters. Could this have worked if they wrote for Voyager rather than TNG? Probably, but we will never know. Number 8, using the whole cast. Robert Beltran, who played Chakotay, once actually said in an interview with StarTrek.com that he felt like this show was all about the Doctor, Janeway and 7 of 9 when she joined in season 4. And when you watch it, he has got a point. Those are the main trio. Now, that could have worked if this show was marketed as it was mainly their show, but it wasn't. It was actually marketed as an ensemble cast with an overall story point. And the writers were concentrating just on that trio. Now, the argument could be made, well, that's what the original series was about. And yes, that's a valid argument. The original series was always about Kirk, McCoy and Spock, which is fine for that show, for a simple fact, they were the main cast, that it was marketed as they were the main characters. Everyone else in that show, who we've all come to know and love, Scotty, Sulu, Chekhov, Uhura, they weren't the main cast. They were actually only secondary characters. But it was fine and it worked for them. It was for that time and how it was written. Voyager, on the other hand, was marketed as an ensemble cast. The entire cast was supposed to be about this, and it was supposed to be about the USS Voyager's journey home back to Earth. They didn't utilise the whole cast. If you were in this show and you weren't the main trio, you were lucky if you got at least 2 or more episodes per season. You only ever got 1, and that was it. They should have used more. Number 7, consistency from characters. On quite a few occasions throughout the Voyager's run, things happened to our characters that were never mentioned or picked up ever again, not even in passing. We can't, as fans, get emotionally invested in characters if things don't matter. And they never actually ever did this. Well, I tell a lie, they did do it once, and they did it in season 2 with Tom Paris. They had a few episodes where Tom Paris was becoming insubordinate, not caring, not listening to instructions, and just doing what he goddamn well pleased. And it turns out that this was a ploy to weed out the last of the marquee in Voyager's crew. And it worked. As a fan, we were watching week in, week out saying, oh, what's going to happen to Tom Paris? And it was brilliant. But they never did this ever again. There was 2 examples where they should have done, or they shouldn't have done in this case. With Chakotay, I can't remember if it was season 5 or 6, but all of a sudden, he was into boxing. Never mentioned before. It was a big hobby during this 1 episode. Never mentioned ever again. Why? How can we get invested when all of a sudden, writers throw curveballs like us? Another example, and this one could have brought in some stories as well. The original Harry Kim did not get home. He died halfway through. The Harry Kim that got home in Endgame, he was actually a duplicate. Would everyone have accepted that straight away? Oh, hell no. You could have actually brought up a season later of something towards Harry Kim. I don't know what. But it would have been some good stories. But they never utilised it. They never had this consistency. Once that episode was over, it was like it was forgotten about. Number 6, more consistent storytelling. Okay, yes, I've literally just mentioned this in the last entry, but that was about the characters. What about the storytelling? The same flaw that things never really happened week to week. Sometimes they did, but very, very rarely. There was one example there for 3 weeks in a row. It was the same story. Oh, we're low on this. Oh, we're low on this. Oh, we're low on this. I remember when I was watching it and got to that 3rd one, I was thinking, oh really, what again? I wanted to turn this off. Now, if they actually mentioned, say, before they started all this, saying, oh, we are missing these ingredients, and if we don't get them soon, we are going to not be able to get home, it might have been fine. You could have worked it into the story, but they never did. It was literally just a new story each and every week. There was no continuation. Especially with the concept Voyager had, you needed that continuation. They never did put it in. It would have worked. It would have, if they did, it would have worked. It would have kept us more invested. Number 5, making the journey look harder than it seemed. The USS Voyager did a journey that should have taken them 70 years, and they did it in 7. Now that part is actually kind of cool, and I'm not going to slate that. The part that I'm not happy about is, did they make it look way too easy? When Voyager got home in Endgame, that ship still pretty much looked like it just rolled off the construction pad. It was too easy. People would have not have been happy. There would have been so much hassle. Every few weeks, Voyager got battered and attacked. Now, in TNG, week in, week out, Enterprise was back to normal, which is fine because you can assume quite easily that Enterprise went to Starbase, got repaired and went back out. Voyager never had that luxury. So who made these repairs? What actually happened? What stress was on the ship? What stress was on the crew? A lot of these crew would have actually had some mental issues, being stranded so far from home. watching their friends die, knowing their friends are stranded 70,000 light years from home. This journey was not an easy journey. It couldn't have been. But the show never did that. They just kept it all nice, neat, put a nice little bow on top. TV was changing at this point. We were getting into this nitty-gritty stuff. Voyager could have been one of the best TV shows at the time if they put a little bit of... Now, I know towards the end they had the Equinox two-parter where they showed Equinox did not have an easy trip, but that's going from one extreme to the other. They needed to find something in the middle. Us as fans would have enjoyed it. We could have actually got behind it a lot more. Number 4, show how they are repairing things. Now, I know I've just touched on this slightly, but this does deserve its own entry. How the hell were they repairing everything on Voyager? Some of the best examples. In Caretaker, the pilot episode, they said they only have 38 photo torpedoes. Now, there are loads of videos on YouTube about how many they actually fired, but when it comes to the photonic torpedoes, they fired around about 85. Now, bit of geeky knowledge, an Intrepid class starship normally holds 2 shuttlecrafts. I'll just put out 4 fingers, I don't know why. 2 shuttlecrafts. At a push, they can have 8. They can hold 8. Star Trek Voyager went through about 17 shuttlecrafts. Where the hell did they get these from? Couldn't they just put something in the background saying, look, we're building new shuttlecrafts. Hey, look, we're building new torpedoes. Hey, look, we're actually building this bulkhead that got blown up. Hey, look, we're sticking black rocks in this control panel that got blown up last week. We could have had this little bit of realism. As I said in the last entry, they didn't have the resources of Starfleet Command behind them. They would have been on their own. You should have seen them week in, week out repairing that ship when they got attacked. I know they did this in Enterprise, where the Enterprise in season 3 got battered badly. And for the rest of that season and the beginning of season 4, you saw all this damage until it got home and got repaired. You saw week by week them making repairs and then getting cleaner and more back together, but the battle damage was there. They should have started and done this with Voyager. Just like put that back in there a little bit. Number 3, keeping the friction between the Starfleet and Marquee crews. One of the coolest concepts that Voyager actually had was the whole Starfleet and Marquee crew having to work together. On one hand, you've got the Starfleet crew, the right crew, the good crew, the righteous crew. And on the other hand, you've got the crew from the Marquee, the renegade terrorist organisation, being forced, merged together and working together 70,000 light years from home. You could have had so many cool storylines from this and spread out for quite some time. But they sort of knocked it on the head after half a series. The only cool thing that came out of that whole storyline was Seska. You could have had so much from it. It should have been drawn out. There is no way in hell that it would have been wrapped up that quickly. There would have been so much going on for so long. And the stupid thing is, they actually had filmed and done the best storyline to end the whole Marquee storyline. And that was the Basics two-parter. Both crews being stranded on an alien planet with no technology whatsoever. But obviously it didn't need to be ended there because it was already done a year and a half beforehand. Such squander. They just needed to think it through a lot better. 2. Get home before the series ended. Granted, this is actually quite a common problem with a lot of TV shows. The shows end on the last episode. The main story is wrapped up on the last episode. But with Voyager, because of what the crew went through, it shouldn't have been. They should have actually got home about halfway through Series 7, not on the last episode, because there is so much more afterwards. Every member of the crew should have had one episode of how they dealt with things back home, because they would have all had to go through. Bear in mind, a lot of the crew are renegades and criminals. Chakotay, a disgraced former Starfleet commander, joins the Marquee. He's a part of a terrorist organisation. What happened to him? Exactly the same with Ablana Torres. Tom Paris was actually freed from prison. He was a convicted prisoner. Harry Kim, did he finally get that promotion? 7 years as an ensign? He should have got a promotion. Did he get it? We don't know. But also, what about the other people, the non-human? 7 of 9. The Doctor. What trials and tribulations did they have when they got back to Earth? Now, we know Janeway got promoted to Admiral because that was in Star Trek Nemesis. Could we have seen that? And also, the last episode should have been the crew of Voyager, or even the new crew of Voyager, going back out on another adventure. That would have been a nice little ending to the whole Voyager franchise. But it was all squandered. Now, yes, I know we've got this in book format, but I would have liked to have seen it with my own eyes. Number 1, the main plot point being the main plot point. So yes, the concept of Star Trek Voyager was Voyager was stranded 70,000 light years from home and tried to get home. That was the premise of Star Trek Voyager, and it got pushed to the background, and it shouldn't have been. The thing is, when Voyager was actually announced here in the UK, before we even found out it was going to be called Voyager, before we found out who the crew is, before we even found out what the ship looked like, all we found out was the new Star Trek series was about a Federation starship stranded on the other side of the galaxy trying to get home. That's all we were told. And me and my friends, we were all excited. We couldn't wait. And yeah, the first couple of episodes, that was the main thing. But then it sort of just drifted into the background and it just came a stereotypical Star Trek with a behind the scenes plot point. There was too much of other stuff and not enough of the main plot point. Now, I'm not saying every single episode should have been about Voyager trying to get home, but it should have been a lot more. 70% of it should have been the crew struggles trying to get home. 30%, yes, 30% was the other bits and bobs, typical Star Trek stuff, but it should have been the main plot point. And the thing is, before anyone says, but that's not what TV was back in those days. No, TV was changing to that sort of thing. It had already worked in DS9. Other programs were starting to do this more serialized TV telling. That's what us as fans actually wanted. We didn't want a monster of the week, which we were used to and we were still getting with Voyager. We actually wanted this continuation story each and every week, and they didn't do it. And yes, the main plot was put to the back. So there we have it. That's my 10 reasons of how Star Trek Voyager could have been better. What do you think? And before anyone shoots me saying we should have done DS9, I actually kind of like DS9. I also did like Babylon 5. I know those two were quite similar, but I did actually like it. It didn't have all these issues. Voyager, out of all the Star Trek series out there, would be at my absolute bottom if I did a worst to best list. Maybe I'll do that one day in the future. I'll wait till Picard's broadcast and get an idea of that. But other than that, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Did you actually enjoy Voyager? There's got to be people out there who likes Voyager. What do you think about it? Leave it in the comments below. Other than that, thank you very much for your time. I'll be back in about a week to do another video for you, which will be my worst or best list. Let's see what we're doing. If you have any suggestions on films or TV shows that I could actually review and see what 10 reasons that could have made it better, please either leave them in the comments down below or even hit me up on Twitter at Berryman81. But other than that, please check out other videos on my channel by clicking on this link here, or just checking out one of my other videos, my latest video, by hitting here. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye bye.